Okay, I will call to order the Ad hoc Bylaws Committee of the Del Mar College District. It is 4:30 p.m. and I will convene our committee meeting. Due to the health and safety concerns related to COVID, this meeting will be conducted by video and/or teleconference, and we are meeting in accordance with the guidance from the Office of the Governor and the Attorney General and the related requirements in law. Members of the public who cannot meet here in person with us were invited to offer public comment ahead of time, and it's my understanding we do not have any public comment today. An electronic copy of our agenda packet was also attached to the online notice. So we've called the meeting to order, and we do have a quorum, but I will call the roll anyway. Dr. Turner?
Present.
Ms. Hutchinson?
I am here.
And I'm Libby Avert, and I am also here. Please join me in a moment of silence, and then we will follow that moment of silence with the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And if you all will please join me in the Del Mar College vision statement. Del Mar College will be the premier choice of life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative faculty and staff who empower students to improve local and global communities. Del Mar College is streaming live audio and video from the official Ad hoc Bylaws Committee meeting on the college's website in real time, with the exception of portions of the meeting considered as closed session by statute. As I mentioned, we do not have any public comments this week for our meeting. And our items for discussion and possible action. First, we do have minutes. Did we receive hard copy minutes? Yes, they're attached. They are attached to our agenda. Thank you. Yes, for the last two meetings, we have the approval of minutes for April 1st of 2021, and then also our last meeting on April 15th of 2021. Mr. Rivera, can we take those in one motion, or do I need to do separate? You can take them in one motion. Okay. If you've had a chance to review the minutes, is there a motion to approve both of those minutes?
I so move. I second.
Thank you. Got a first and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Okay, let's jump right in and continue our work. The agenda looks much like our past agendas, and let me recap just a little bit. At our last meeting, Mr. Rivera was kind enough to put together a packet of information for us with some documents from other community colleges. I know that we've all had a chance to look through those and made our notes in various ways. I know that I did as well. And, you know, we did talk previously about our committee identifying for Mr. Rivera some of those areas that we felt like perhaps could be addressed in a better way in our documentation, and that he could help identify where that best goes once we give some sort of high-level direction there. And so I would like to start, Mr. Rivera, unless you have another idea, but if you may remember from our very first minutes, we identified, there were about 10 areas that were topics that we were going to review. And I kind of started there just to make sure it covered everything. And I'd like to go through those just very briefly. I'm not wanting to do a deep dive necessarily, but just to kind of see, are these still areas that we think we should keep in mind as we start going through a little bit more meticulously. Do you all have that list by chance in front of you? It was 10 items in the minutes from our first meeting. It's on page 3 of those minutes, I believe.
Additional topics, is that?
Yes, additional topics to be reviewed.
Okay.
And if you look at that, the first one, we talked a little bit about social media and Regents' freedom of speech. And I'm going to ask that for now that we put that on hold for a little bit, because there is some court action going on around that issue that I think will be relevant to our discussion, and that we need to just kind of wait and see what happens there. I'd hate for us to spend a lot of time on it and then have to revisit it depending on what courts decide there. So we've got plenty of other things to occupy our time. And then we talked a little bit too about the rules around video conferencing and remote type meetings. But Mr. Rivera, correct me if I'm wrong, I do feel like that there are guidelines in place that we are following right now. Correct? Okay. Is there, I mean, I'm feeling like this is sort of a back burner issue for me, as opposed to an immediate, it's not really an ethics issue so much for me right this minute. Is there any disagreement with that?
No, just when we get to the meetings, we'll just have to kind of add something in there. It's just for future reference.
Yes, yes, okay.
Regent Averett, also,
Yes.
and Dr. Villarreal is here. I mean, we're following some legislation, actually, that's been filed regarding video conferencing. The bill sponsored by Representative Canales from the Valley. So that could also be something that changes or tweaks, what the current law is on that.
Okay.
What sort of things is that addressing? Can you?
They're really addressing transparency. And that's really kind of the overall theme with video conferencing and what is and isn't allowed by certain entities. So I was just looking at the calendar. We've got one more meeting before Friday Die, so we should know by your June
Right.
meeting what is that. We should know by your June meeting, the June 3rd meeting, if that gets passed through.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember exactly what they're doing, but they're tightening up the video conference provision that under the Open Meetings Act. And I'll tell you, I know where it's coming from. The expressed concern is that not you guys, but other governmental entities have been misusing that and keeping the public out.
Yeah.
I think there was, for example, things that I thought were elementary, like not allowing the public an opportunity to call in. Right.
Yeah.
There was, there were major rules set in place at the beginning of the legislature, specifically around the redistricting hearings on whether or not to allow individuals to call in. And so that, again, it's an issue affecting a lot of the different areas, including our current legislators, so.
Okay. Well, I don't have any question that we're within the legal guidelines. And to me, this is more a transition we're going through right now, where we had some extraordinary rules because of the pandemic. And as hopefully we are getting out of that, how are we going to go back to where we were? Are we going to stay with these extraordinary rules? Anyway, that's about it. But not an ethics or legal issue.
Sure. Good, thank you. Well, we will definitely revisit that then when a little bit more is known. I think we've mentioned a few times that in our agenda, we always read the vision statement, we don't read the mission statement, and so we definitely have identified that, and we'll correct that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. We have talked about conflict of interest and vendor relationships. I'm sure I flagged several places in some of the other colleges' documents that might be appropriate for us. The power of sitting regents to appoint new regents and the timing, reviewing, and regarding of that application process.
Well, comparing to some of the other colleges, we're pretty much in line with them. They might just have things split up a little bit, just so there's a little bit more easy understanding, and where ours is just kind of compressed. So I noticed some things that might be a little missing or a little muddy where they are very clear, but that's really it. I didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary, just cleaning up language and maybe just breaking the parts up a little bit so it's very clear for transparency.
So I'm going to excuse me, remind everybody to speak closely to their microphones. Sometimes, yeah, I know that sometimes it's difficult for the public to hear us, so if you would just get right up on top of the microphone, please. I appreciate it. Susan, what are your thoughts about the appointment process?
I think it's the same thing. I don't think we have a problem. I think it would just be preventative to make sure we don't have a problem if there's any question about how things are going.
And I agree. I feel like it's worked pretty well.
It has.
The last few times. It's, you know, it's not as detailed perhaps as some of the others, but at the same time that gives us a little bit of wiggle room should we need it.
Flexibility's been good, and I don't think it's, I'd be worried about tightening it up too much and
Right.
not being able to react accordingly.
Right. The flexibility has been really good around, well, around COVID, frankly, when offices have been closed, or around spring break if we've had an opening that's required us to have a little bit more time there. So, Mr. Rivera, is there anything really concerning to you in that area?
For your thought only, but without compromising flexibility, do you want to build in any kind of time frame, any sort of time periods, so that you're not kind of making it up situationally every time? The good thing about that
Time
is
periods for
application,
deadlines for applications, how long we have it after that.
think about it, just
Yeah.
just a thought.
Yeah.
If you put that in there, then it's providing predictability and clarity on what you're going to be doing and how you're going to
Consistency.
proceed. On the other hand, if you do that, then you're locked into that. So,
Right. We don't have to decide that right this minute. But, and Dr. Turner, this is before you had joined us, there was one appointment where we extended the application deadline by a vote of the board. But, you know, there was seemed a little unusual. I mean, we knew we could do it. And so it might be worth putting something in that still retains that flexibility. That's really important, but maybe even specifies that the board can't reopen or for a limited period of time or something. It just does feel a little wide open to me.
Maybe a compromise in there is to have a anticipated time period for any of those, and yet it could be changed by a vote of a supermajority or some specific extraordinary. I think in that case there was some holidays and pandemic and all of that involved.
For the
There's just something in
extension,
there. To be
That's
able to
why I
extend
gotcha.
it, but understand that an extension would be something extraordinary. But I still don't think it's really broken.
No, I agree. I agree. It's not broken. And then the rest here really are just part of our agreed upon process already. As I mentioned, Mr. Rivera already gave us some best practices from other colleges. We've mentioned the mission statement versus the vision statement. And then, of course, we're well aware of the need to go through the Weaver recommendations and see where we agree and where we don't.
Excuse me, Regent Averett?
Yes.
I do want to talk quickly about the defining of reading the vision versus the mission.
Great.
You know,
Thank
I
you.
think Dr. Wilson, when she's talked to the board about the difference, you know, the vision statement does tend to be more motivational, big picture of college, whereas the mission is more operational. I don't know that when procedures were put in place, if there was a difference between the two or if there was even a vision statement. So before you move forward in policy, made me think about which one, you know, you would like to move forward with as a recommendation.
Thank you for that history. I personally prefer the vision statement. I was hoping we could just change the word mission to vision in the language that we have. Right. I don't even know if we had a vision statement at the time, or certainly not the one that we recently adopted.
Correct,
Right.
correct. And the mission statement now, you know, it's very specific according to SAC-COC guidelines. You know, we have a multi-campus community college, what we provide access to. So again, very operational.
Whereas our vision statement is much more about who we are, what we hope to bring to the, yes, what our soul is. That's a good way to put it. Yes, thank you. Is anybody in disagreement? Do y'all, okay, we can check that one off. We've decided that we want to change the word mission to vision everywhere where it says we need to read that at a meeting. Okay? All right. Good job. Good job. Okay. Anything else, Dr. Villarreal, before I move on that you wanted to mention?
No, thank you.
Okay. So we have, Mr. Rivera obviously gave us some more documents, which is great. Thank you. And we will address those a little bit. But as he told us, those are, well, I will let you describe what you've handed us.
The documents we just, sure. So we thought it would be helpful to go back, and since one of your tasks is to harmonize the bylaws with college policy and the code of ethics form, with the assistance of our executive legal assistant, Ms. Sanchez, we have, what you have in front of you is a comparison. Let me explain it. In red, so looking at the bylaws, for example, so if it says not in policy, it means it's not in not in Del Mar College's policies, that section. And then if you look on the second page, you'll see policy references. Mm-hmm. And that means that that particular provision is included in your policy.
There's no statement being made as to whether that's a good or a bad thing. Okay, good.
Not at all.
No, because this is really your BOP, your operation procedures, and everything else should follow under this.
Yeah, all we're doing is, it's just a comparison, a basic comparison for similarity and contrast. That's it. Yeah, so for your consideration, so you can look at how it all fits, and you can see that there's quite a bit of your bylaws that are not also in your policy, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You look over, importantly, on page 8 of your bylaws, you will see that a majority of those items under Roman 9, and their statement of conduct and ethics, those are found also in your policies. Not all of them, but under 9 subpoint letter O, you'll see, there, Regent Hutchins, this is the kind of cleanup that I know you've wanted us to do. Where there's policy refers to sexual misconduct and bylaws refer to sexual harassment. So we need to be consistent on things like that. Looking at the next document, the actual policies, your B policies under Chapter 2, again, we did a similar review and try to point out which ones are found, kind of cross-referencing which ones are found in your bylaws or the code of ethics and which ones are not. So after this initial run, I mean, the idea is to see what you think from the review and see where the differences are, and if you prefer one over the other, or if you just want to direct us to go through and make a first, take a first stab at harmonizing everything, we can do that as well. But we wanted to give you at least the differences for now, let you think about that, and if there are changes that you want us to make or direction you want to give us, be happy to take that input, and we're also happy to move forward with coming back with documents that are more consistent with each other.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Thank you.
Sure.
And I know I kind of jumped ahead to that. Sorry about that, Mr. Rivera. But
No.
yeah, my intent was not for us to go through this in any great detail today, but just so you all would know what it is, so we can review it and then perhaps talk in more detail at our next meeting. But what I would like to do is to get your comments so that we can share them with Mr. Rivera about the other colleges, anything that may have sort of sparked a thought in your mind of something that we may want to address in a better or different or deeper way in our own documentation, I'm sure we all did this in our own way. I basically went through everything and just starred and jotted down some things and highlighted some things that I thought might be good. And
Can I mention one other point?
Please,
I'm
sure.
sorry. Just to round out the documentation, we also went, because I mentioned to you all that the San Jacinto, the San Jac Community College bylaws were very similar to yours. And for the record, the Del Mar bylaws were adopted in April of 1978. San Jac were adopted March 1981. So so maybe they were following you, but yeah, almost. But so the last document we went through and highlighted what they have and we don't. Okay, so I thought that was very good. They got some good detail here. So again, if you want to go through and circle and say yes, let's include that. Thank you.
good.
I just
Yes,
wanted to-
yes, thank you. That was very helpful too. Regent Hutchinson, do you mind starting and just from more of a high level, are there bits and pieces that kind of jumped out to you that you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Okay.
I think my answer is there weren't like high-level gaps. So I was looking for that first. I think if anything, and I really haven't gotten down to the details of it, it's more cleaning up wording. And clean up maybe too close, but there's some ways to make what we're saying clearer. But on first brush at the overall gaps, I didn't see any.
Right. I didn't see any gaps per se, something we absolutely don't have. But I did notice a few things that I wanted, frankly, to ask some history on. But before I do that, certainly, Dr. Turner, I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I went through Houston, San Jacinto, and Weaver, and they're pretty much in line. I noticed Houston does go into detail, and there's some, especially on the removal of a regent, and they did touch on the social media. And there was some things that I noticed that we didn't have, and they were just very clear and a little bit, I thought, a little bit more detailed and transparent than what we have. So I thought, as we go through, we'll decide if we want to add them or not. And just language and just a little revamp, but I didn't see anything where we were like way out there and we did not have. So, but yeah, I have a lot of notes and a lot of stars and highlights and things that I went, oh, I think that sounds better than what we have. Yes, I think we should maybe add that. And one of the things, though, I thought about is just breaking up ours a little bit more, like Houston was really kind of laid out. Instead of having to be for like the elections and the appointments, I think we should have that as a separate. And just like the ethics on ours is in the back. I think that was more important. Should be maybe like San Jacinto has it second. So I think there's just maybe just kind of moving things around and then adding to those parts that we thought was, important that, I don't want to micromanage us either. But I just thought there was just some things, but yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned too Houston and the removal from office. I found that really interesting, and that was one that I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Rivera, because and Regent Hutchinson, I know y'all have some history here. I found the Houston language there. I thought it went beyond what we could legally do.
Yeah.
So could you?
Can you direct me? I'm sorry. I've got-
Sure. Yeah.
Houston's was the one that I found personally clunky.
Yes, I did too. There was a lot there,
but,
right?
Is there a page? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
I can find it.
Oh yeah, when I was looking at it, I wanted one that was really wordy and one that was extreme, and then one that was light, and to where we can find somewhere in the middle of some of those.
I can answer the question generally, and then also there is, they have a mechanisms for enforcement. Yeah, and where, right, A11, that's exact, right, where Houston,
So, Mr. Rivera, I'm
Yes.
sorry, what I had highlighted was Tarrant County,
okay,
and it was Tarrant County, page 34 of their bylaws. And there's a whole section on removal from office. 34.
got it. So this is the statute. So they've taken the provisions of the removal statute, chapter 87 of the government code, and put them down. That's an option for you. We cite that provision. We have the actual legal cite, but we don't spell it out.
That's fine with me. I mean, as long as the legal citation's there. I don't need to junk it up.
And I can explain some background. Dr. Villarreal, we've had this conversation. SAC-COC actually requires that a board have a mechanism for removal of a trustee or regent that is not complying with their duties or violating the duty or something. In Texas, you do not have the authority to remove each other because you are elected officials. However, that doesn't mean that you're not subject to removal. You are subject to removal on any of these grounds. This is taken, so there you see at the bottom, local government code 87.011, and education code, those are all the sections at the very bottom of that provision, D. But I do want to explain this, just to fill it out. Even if a regent or trustee, even if there's grounds for removal, you still can't vote on this ground. You have to file a petition for removal has to be filed in state court, and there's a whole process that has to be, there's
That's where I found this confusing, is because it's talking about the actions that can be taken, but not by this board.
That's right.
It doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem like, it seems misleading, if anything.
And they also talked about having the authority to censor. So I was noticing that too. So.
Which we do have
And
that.
that we can do, yes.
Yes, and we do have that in our
You do.
documentation now. Well, might I suggest this? Let's go back to Houston Community College, because I do have a few things starred there. Much of it are just questions, Mr. Rivera. But on page 2 of 7 in the Houston Community College Board bylaws, under their code of conduct, section 4, letter I, it says, resist any attempt at undue influence from political, religious, or other external bodies, and protect the institution from such influence. I wasn't certain, and I didn't do the detailed comparison that Dr. Turner did, if we have something similar to that.
I think you do under your bylaws.
I think that also applied to like personal influences on board decisions.
I think it's worded differently, but
Yes.
obviously, but where is that?
And so as not to completely bog us down,
Here it is.
you don't have to find the answer to all of these questions right
Okay.
this minute, okay? But I couldn't recall whether we had political, religious, or other external bodies. I wasn't sure if we had some language like that, and whether that might be something we want to consider. In that same section, but on the next page, letter K talks about board members are prohibited from suggesting or recommending subcontractors to vendors at any time. And again, I just could not remember whether we had,
Don't think we have anything like that.
You do not.
I
that
I
specific.
personally think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I'm circling it.
I'm sorry, so I'm gonna note these.
Yep, section 4 in their code of conduct, letter K.
I mean, shouldn't we have something broader about dealing with vendors
Sure.
at all?
Yes.
It's like speaking to faculty or staff. I don't think we should tell vendors how to, this may imply that's the only thing you can't talk to vendors about. And I would think it's broader than that.
Right. I think
Section 4, letter I.
No,
I
that-
and K.
That was K.
Letter K.
Okay.
It is certainly my personal opinion that we should have in writing that we are completely separate from vendor relationships, subcontractors, any of that.
I like that better.
And make that as strong as possible.
Yes. If I can go back to I like the general concept of we ought to be protected from outside influences. I think when you start making lists, especially putting in words like religious, that one sort of sticks out like.
That's
you
a good
shouldn't.
point. That's a good point. And when you start making a list, it can never be an all-encompassing list.
Yeah, or it even implies we're more worried about these that are part of the list. And
Right.
A better way to take that same concept is to stress or emphasize the importance of y'all's independence.
Exactly.
Being
Okay.
Independent from external factors.
Yeah.
Sure. Right.
And I also circled C, encourage and engage in open and honest discussion and making board decisions to respect the differences of opinion. Open, it's not, there's a few things that, just wasn't in there. I don't know if you would be interested or not. And I also circled F, respect the authority and responsibilities of the college employees and external contractors, empowering them to work without interference. And that just alleviates our micromanagement. So I actually had circled C, F, I, K, and L just because they weren't part of that, if that was something that you'd be interested in adding.
I do like statements about, I think we do have some language around civil discourse and respect, which is important, but I do like that this takes it a little bit further to make sure that those who might have a minority of opinion get the chance to voice. Yeah.
Whether
voice
we
their
agree with
concern.
it or not, I just having them as a board member, for them to voice their opinions, and especially if, some of us are districts, they might have a stronger voice on some issues,
Agreed. Did you get?
If I can, I think it's a great point. So I've got it down. I wanted to kind of go back to the earlier point. If you look at your own bylaws under, again, Roman 9, your statement of conduct and ethics, page 8, this is where I'd remembered it. And so it's letter D, render all decisions based on the available facts and independent judgment. Refuse to surrender that judgment to individuals or special interest groups, and abide by and uphold the final majority decision of the board.
For me, I think what's missing there is perhaps the phrase undue influence.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. We can,
That's good.
we
Thank
can
you.
look at that.
A little stodgy language, which I probably wrote, to refuse to surrender to that judgment could be, we could probably say it more simply to say without the undue influence of individuals or something like that.
Yeah, I think.
I would disagree.
Sounded good at the time.
I would disagree that you've ever written anything stodgy. Okay.
Okay. Back to Houston, Section 5 talks about prohibited communications, political contributions. It's extensive. I'm not personally advocating for that. However, I do like that there are parts of it that continue to emphasize that distance between the regents and subcontractors, potential vendors even. D there, under 5D, says each potential vendor, subcontractor, blah, 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 shall include a complete list of contractors in its response to the solicitation. And I've only, because I haven't been through that process very often, I can't remember if we require that. Susan, do you remember?
The subcontractors and things?
That each potential vendor, list shall include a complete list of contractors in its response to the solicitation.
I think they
We do.
are.
We do.
Yeah,
We do.
yeah.
And it includes their board of directors,
I'm not sure about that detail.
because this says
It's
for
a lot of
purposes.
detail, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should include their board of directors, chairperson, CEO, chief financial officer, anybody with a specific interest. The reason I think that appealed to me, perhaps not in such a long fashion, is because I often don't know that I may know somebody who
conflict, yep,
has,
yep.
who has a substantial interest.
Yes.
Duly noted, and
And then for me, from Houston, the only other part I marked was I was not aware whether or not we required board members to post their campaign finance reports on our website. Do we?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
It's on there.
I was appointed. I haven't run yet, so
Now
Lucky
know.
you.
now I know. That's great. Thank you. Now, I didn't have anything else starred in Houston. Is there any other sort of topic in Houston that any other committee members would like
No,
to
but I
mention?
made a comment, or I circled about the campaign finance reports. I just didn't know it was actually listed like that, just for transparency if anyone was looking at our bylaws. So I just didn't know, because looking like in the elections section, if there was, I didn't really see it just, you must do this. So
yeah, we
I
don't
just,
have it in there.
yeah, so we might want to just maybe add a statement saying this is that
To the
all
point.
campaign financing is found on the website, or it can be,
Okay.
I just believe in transparency. And I also looked at for Houston, number 7, the prohibited benefits. Do we have anything under there, especially under responsibilities, just knowing that, we don't accept gifts and such? Because I know we have it in K through 12. I mean, we just cannot, even teachers can't accept gifts or anything like that.
I'm sorry, what page are you on, Dr. Turner?
I'm on, 5 out of 7 under, it'd be number 7 itself. Under the limits of repayment of personal loans, there's a 7 that says prohibited benefits. Just a,
Rules or prohibitions, are they just
But I-
statutory? I
Yes.
don't, is that
I
right?
think that-
There's nothing in our bylaws
I
about it, it's
don't-
just statutory?
Right.
so is that something, just a statement to add, just for the people? I mean, we don't have to, we can just summarize this, just so there's something on there, just so it's clear.
I agree
this
with
is,
you.
this is between us and the public, what I learned from campaigning, really don't know a whole lot.
Yeah.
They're just not aware. I mean, it's not there. If it's not in writing, they really don't know, so.
And I will tell you, Regents, that Regent Turner's point is that you find that in other.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I like this.
Oh, yeah.
So that's not, I mean, that's actually pretty
That's
common.
not, yeah, it's pretty common, especially in education.
Yeah.
There's just so much out there.
Mhm.
Don't know everything.
And coming from a background in corporate America too, when I was looking at our information, I was looking for a little bit more guidance, meaning, what's the dollar limit? I mean, can somebody buy me breakfast? Can they buy me coffee? Can, is a gift over a certain amount must be returned? I mean, I know we have some phrasing around it can be given to the foundation, but what if it's, an unsolicited Christmas present or,
So we might need to have that clearer.
and
what
I,
what we can and cannot do. Sorry, I didn't mean to
it's
interrupt.
okay. Well, and I personally tend to err on nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I can pay for my own breakfast.
Right.
Yes. Same thing.
Yeah, so again, if there's a compromise in there where we're not just restating a lot of state law, but I like the recognition in here of kind of why that's being done. Maybe it's obvious, but just a statement that in order to avoid the tendency for influence on performance of duties, and maybe if there's a major issue, no gift over a certain dollar amount or something. I don't know how detailed that statute is, as a matter of fact.
Well, and this may be an area where we want to go further than the statute, understanding that if there's a violation of that, we don't have much teeth to do anything about it. I understand that, but I personally am in favor of having some restrictions here that are stronger than what the state says. I think that says something about us and what we hold important.
Integrity.
Sorry. So, Mr. Rivera, I think what you heard was we'd like a pretty strongly
Robust.
worded, yes, robust.
Got it.
Thank you. Anything else out of Houston that caught your eye? Okay, next was Lone Star College under tab 6. I don't know if I started anything there. Well, I did on page 4 of their policies. And this wasn't just them. I noticed this in a few places. Under leadership responsibilities, they have the phrase avoid real or apparent conflicts of interest. And I don't feel like we're consistent in either saying real conflict of interest, or apparent or potential. And just speaking personally again, I feel strongly about the language around apparent or perceived conflict of interest, and that we should avoid that. Again, understanding that may go further than statute goes.
You're only required to report actual conflicts of interest, only, Now, when it comes to taking board action, you can always, if you believe you want to avoid the appearance of a conflict, abstain, from that. But in terms of what you have to actually file, I mean, you don't have to file anything if it's an apparent or there's an appearance of impropriety or an appearance of a conflict. Doesn't mean you can't require each.
It's a little hard to know an appearance because that's kind of subjective. I mean, it's important, and it's important to do that when it arises, but I'm not sure like a conflict of interest where you could say, I'm going to report that in advance I would always have a conflict with this institution or that business. I don't know about appearance. But I like the idea that we state in here that we're going to avoid appearances of impropriety, and maybe with a different standard. Okay.
And while we're on that topic, Mr. Rivera, correct me if I'm wrong, when a regent does file something with you, you obviously are made aware of that, but the other regents are not.
Right.
We could,
it gets put on the website, but again, there's no announcement to the rest of the board that this has been filed.
we would have to go look for it. So I personally would like something, I would like those brought to our attention.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But we can probably
On
put that under duties, right, or responsibilities?
He'll
or
find them. He'll find a place
I'll
for
find
it.
Sure, it's as simple as, because I'm going to build in a conflict of interest
I think so
section.
too.
And
Yes.
so forms that are filed under 176, will be provided to the board. Or the board will be made aware of any filings. Something like that, simple.
And continue to put it on the website,
Sure,
certainly,
sure.
yes. Did either of you have anything from Lone Star that you want to mention? Okay. Okay. And then under tab 7 is San Jacinto, which, again, thank you, Mr. Rivera. and-
Sorry for the redundancy, but.
and Deborah. No, that's
it is-
okay.
It is different. This one's clean and the other one's got, we hope, helpful highlighting for you.
No, I like looking at all the differences and so forth and how we can merge and make, I like.
So, do we want to go through the comparison between ours and San
No.
Jac?
Now, the only thing that I saw, like, under the statement of board conduct was number 15. Everything else I circled that we had. So when it's like, oh, we have that circle. But
Well,
it
we
was-
have this copy now with the yellow highlights that Ms. Sanchez did for us. Mr. Rivera, have you had a chance to look at this comparison with San Jac?
I have.
And I also made a notation about the Board of Trustees shall have the authority to censor a trustee. They went into a little bit more detail than what we had, I thought. Or maybe it's just in a different place.
That's it. Okay. So is there a reason ours don't mention that we serve without compensation? Do we need to mention that? It really makes no difference to me.
I don't see it as a requirement or, I mean, you don't get paid, but
Right.
that's not, you don't have to agree to that. I mean, that's, so.
So also
Other
on,
things we don't get compensation, we don't get bowed down to. I mean, there's a lot of things that, not on a regular basis.
I did find it interesting, though, that next paragraph, that you must remain a resident of the
Yeah.
college taxing district throughout the term of office. I like that.
And that is I mean, you got to have at the time of election and maintain, or at the time that you file for a place on the ballot, and then throughout your term, you must maintain residency. So, that would be easy.
That would be
Yeah,
easy to
yeah.
add. Okay. On page 2, number 6 talks about appointments. Do you know the reasoning for this, Mr. Rivera? Why they require 80% on appointments?
So no, just be majority, right?
Yeah, you have
But we do
majority,
this in
we-
closed session and
Right.
then we vote in public. And usually, I don't know.
I do not know.
I'm sure, what does it mean by move forward? But does it mean be appointed?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't know why it's
So they're
to say-
going above majority vote.
Yeah, it's just a super majority that they require for appointments. I'm fine with a majority.
I think a majority is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're our lawyer. Do we need to worry about this little Texas education code that's highlighted?
That's the one for absences, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, we can add that as well.
Okay.
I think that's to be complete.
Okay. We already, on page 3, we already talked about that we want to change everything to vision statement.
Well, this just says we will
Oh,
we'll
review. That's
them.
right. Well, we should review both.
Yes. And it just says
Periodically.
periodically.
I'm all for periodically.
All for periods.
And I see that we've highlighted that we'll establish a strategic plan consistent with the vision and mission statement. Do we not have something, do we not mention strategic plan in our
I don't,
responsibilities?
Should be under duties though,
Right.
right? Number 8, it says shall establish goals consistent with the role and mission of the college.
What
But
if we
we
just
do-
added the
but-
phrase?
Yeah, but we do have you have a plan. We have a plan in place.
Right, absolutely.
That you'll need to review.
What if we just added strategic plan as with the words goals? I don't know.
I'm fine with that. It's an easy fix. On number 8, Mr. Rivera, of our board duties and responsibilities.
Got it.
I see number 9, we don't have a chancellor,
Right.
so don't think this really applies to us. The next page, page 4, is their statement of board conduct. Number 14, they talk about actual or potential conflict of interest.
And then they provide the specific code section.
So I will leave that to your judgment, Mr. Rivera.
I'll just put in the 2 cents that I want to suggest that we may want to strive for something better.
Absolutely.
That of course it's going to be within the law, but I wouldn't just say that's all you got to do. We may have some other instance.
Right.
Well, yeah, because their 14 is really RQ, identify and disclose any actual or potential conflict of interest, and they act for general public good regardless. And they just added the code, yeah.
Right, and I don't
Do we need
think
that?
we have to do that.
But no, but 15 I noticed is what we don't have.
Do we to me, that it says 2 very different, not different, separate things in one paragraph.
15?
Yeah,
Number-
I mean, on one you're taking, both good
Gotcha.
statements. One's not taking private action that'll compromise the board. The other is respecting confidentiality.
We can separate them.
I would separate that if we want both of them. That's my only thought.
I'm good with that, and I think it makes sense to separate them. Okay, on the next page, page 5, they talk about their censure process and that the censure requires a supermajority. Does our censure process not require a supermajority?
No.
It does not. Simple majority. I'm okay with simple majority.
And where's that?
Where is
at?
ours?
I don't have a notation. Oh, I see it.
Board
I see it's J. J under responsibilities.
Right.
Okay. Now, do you want to keep it there or put it under ethics?
I mean, the censure's more the enforcement. I feel like the code of ethics is more what you're supposed to be doing, and this is the what if you don't.
Gotcha, okay.
And I think as far as where things go, I think what might be appropriate is once
Let me start digging.
Ms.
yeah.
Rivera sort of gets a better understanding of what we think needs to go somewhere, he will then come back to us with a draft, probably a few times.
Yeah, because
And then we can start to move things around if we feel like that's appropriate.
Yeah, because Weaver also talked about number 2, talked about Regent misconduct too. So
Right.
he mentioned that too.
That's
We might
right.
want to look at when we're there.
Right. Okay, back on page 5 of San Jacinto, duties of the officers.
Oh, yeah.
A few that we don't have in ours. For the chair, enforces the bylaws, performs other duties as may be required, and can vote on all matters.
Yeah, I actually have a list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Additional duties? Yeah.
Because
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
well, I would just, like preside at meetings of the, I'm not sure, because some people kind of like added the board of trustees, if we just put board of regents, don't know if that's needed. It doesn't say anything, does it? And saying just the appoint of the committees, sign all official documents and contracts, because what else? Just make sure, because the chair would sign off on that, right? So whatever they would be signing off on. And like D, I just put perform such because everything has a verb except for D. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Perform such additional functions specified by the board or by required by law. I thought that might be, making sure. And then I just added a couple things that I saw in the other ones. Serve. I don't know if this was needed or not. I didn't really serve as the officio voting member of all board committees. Is that required or is that needed? No? Okay, I wasn't quite sure exactly what that meant. I hadn't. I thought G was important as a chair, promote board unity, and share all information with other board members in a timely fashion, or at least just share information with other board members. But I really believe in promoting the board unity. I thought that was important because some of us might be kind of factioned. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Be nice about it.
yes.
So I thought, and I think she's doing a really good job doing that, bringing the new members with the existing members. I really appreciate that. So I don't know what you would. Yeah.
Right, and and what's
can-
good about that is we're not, this is for future boards too, when all of us are gone doing something else, and, what will be the best practices for officers in the future. And so I think,
that. Just setting a
those are good
standard.
points to consider.
And B, what I just put on the side is like recommends the appointment of all board committees and chairpersons, because she's doing that now. So just giving it a little bit more stance or a little bit more substance for B. Just so. Thank you. Sorry, I was really digging this
Those are good.
weekend and looking at.
That's great, Dr. Turner, thank you.
I only question about enforcing the bylaws. Is that something that the chair does, or is that what the board does?
Right, I agree. I would
Okay.
not include
Okay.
enforce the bylaws.
Okay.
That's
Agreed.
fine.
I don't think it's appropriate for.
And do we
one
need
region.
the serve as the ex officio or officio voting member? Do we need that either? Yes.
I don't think so.
I don't even know what that means. I'm sorry.
No, I don't
I guess
think so.
assuming that if there's a tie or something that she has a vote in, or
No, so when you have committees, you can designate people as ex officio members. They're not actually members of the committee,
Gotcha.
but they can attend, they're non-voting members of the committee.
gotcha. Okay.
Entitles them to attend meetings and actually participate, but when it comes to vote,
Gotcha. Okay.
so that your committee charters for,
understand
did we say that, I forget whether our committee charter for this has the, I know Dr. Scamilla, for example, is an ex officio member of the
Mhm.
committee.
Right.
Correct. I don't believe it has the chair, though.
Okay,
I don't think.
but that's what I mean, you can,
Gotcha.
Okay. The vice chair duties,
I just added again for B performs.
right, you added the
I'm
verb,
sorry,
which is,
yes.
which is good.
Well,
That's
Performs
fine.
required by law and promote unity. I think that's important that all office holders promotes unity. I don't know if you agree or not, but I just kind of added it for the vice chairs and the secretary to promote unity. I don't know.
I do, what Sanjak has on all of them that we don't have is the perform other duties as may be required by law
Yeah, I have that
or
down.
imposed by the Board of Trustees. I don't, if you feel like that's necessary, Mr. Rivera, then we could include that. And then for the secretary, they have the secretary serving as the official custodian of minutes, books, records,
But we don't.
and seal of the board. We don't have that in ours. Do we need
But do you
it?
sign contracts? Do you do
I-
any of that?
I sign what they put in front of me.
So I just didn't know, so like sign official documents and contracts, does she do, or just documents is fine? I wasn't sure. To add the word contracts
Contracts.
like they had.
I'm fine with
This-
official documents. I think that
Okay.
encompasses lots of things.
I think technically it's the secretary of a board is the custodian of the records,
Right.
but that doesn't mean you keep them in your office or that.
Right, I understand.
You have others that perform that. But if it came to having to sign something saying this is an official record of the board,
Right.
your signature would be the formal signature.
Do you feel like we need to specify an hour duties that the secretary is the official custodian?
Probably,
Okay,
just to be
okay,
clear.
to
That's
clean
a
that up.
typical provision in bylaws.
And in the interest of time, I think we can skip through some of these committees that are different because we've already addressed a number of those in our conversations.
If I had something on page 7.
Yes,
So we're doing a targeted look as we go through here to wrap this up. At the bottom, meetings, I like the fact in that first paragraph, under meetings, where they talk, the last sentence, a workshop, they're talking about a workshop. Right now, you don't have anything in your bylaws specifically talking about workshops, and that's of course how you meet. You regularly have, workshops. So you might want to think about putting that into your bylaws.
Just recognizing that they might be held, is that the idea? I mean, I don't know what this sentence seems to not really add anything, but I could see addressing workshops generally that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that-
Something a little more proactive or active, that the chair can call a workshop or can schedule a workshop.
So just a quick
As
history.
needed.
So the board used to have a whole list of committees. And then you all have been working with the workshop format for some time now, quite successfully, frankly.
Mhm.
But there's nothing in your bylaw, you've never acknowledged that in your bylaws, that's a modus operandi for you now, that's what you do. So-
No, that's considered a meeting, so I
It is a
actually had it under meetings, where like you had open, you had regular, you had closed, you had workshops, you had retreats. I was just kind of adding things that you do. So
Okay.
I had it under, because they were talking about the different types of meetings, so I put it there. And, and under meetings, I just kind of added something about having access to the agenda and the board effects, yes, so they kind of know where our stuff is and how the access to it. But-
I like
but we
that a
could talk-
lot, Lori.
Yeah.
I think the idea of compare and contrast. Here are the things that are the same, like a workshop and a regular meeting are really quite similar. A closed meeting and a regular meeting are quite different. And
Just,
I like the organization of it. Good.
just a notation that
Okay.
these are the things that we do. Even like under duties and responsibilities, when we get there, we really kind of need to add about our onboarding procedures and the classes that we need to take. But, that's for later or whenever,
that's a really good point, and it reminds us that these are not just for us, they're for the public to understand how we operate and what's expected of us and what we expect of ourselves. And to that point, Mr. Rivera, I know you and I had some conversations about potentially adding a preamble to our code of ethics. Is that what we were talking about? Yes. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I realize that there are things that you want to say that would properly be in a preamble or a statement of ethics, some ethical principle, something, your pronouncement that this is what you're trying to do with these bylaws.
I like
You don't
that.
have that?
I like that. Like preambles.
I like that
Yeah.
too, because it can be written. Some of what I appreciated in some of these other colleges' documents were that they were a little more conversational.
And less legalistic and statutory.
No
Yeah.
offense to my friends, the
that's right.
attorneys in the room, but yes, they
None
were.
taken.
Good. I like that.
Yes, again, I think that introduces and says who we are and why we think these things are important, so that's good. Mr. Rivera, was there anything else specifically in San Jac documents that you thought we might want to take a look at? If not, I am, just because I'm looking through my own notes, I did make a note for Dallas County Community College under their ethics, which is on page 2 of 3. Under ethics.
Which tab is that?
I'm sorry, yeah, tab 11.
Okay, thanks.
That's an easy way to put it.
Quicker. Yeah. I've got Austin Community College.
Oh, I'm sorry, these are the ones
no, there's
where
some more.
the ethics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Now I'm
if
with
you
you.
keep going, then Dallas is a
Next.
few in, and I'm on page 2 of the Dallas County Community College Code of Ethics. And it says a board member shall not, and number 4 says, accept employment, including self-employment or compensation, or engage in a business, charity, nonprofit organization, or professional activity that could reasonably be expected to impair the board member's independence of judgment in the performance of official duties. While wordy, and again, it's a list, so then you wonder who are we leaving out? But I did feel like that went beyond what we currently have. And so that may just be something that you look at as you're strengthening the conflicts of interest and, staying away from perceived
Yeah,
or potential
I
conflicts
agree.
as well.
I loaded the highlight, and we'll take a look at that.
Thank you. Seeing that it is past 5:30, I will tell you what I did have in mind for our next meeting is to dive into the Weaver recommendations.
Okay.
And you've given us a head start, Mr. Rivera, you and Ms. Sanchez, thank you very much. So we've got some homework that he gave us there, so we can look at that and kind of go through this process again to see what we like in there, what we feel like may need to be tweaked a little bit. But before we close, was there anything else in your notes from the other peer colleges that you all wanted to mention?
I think that got all of mine that aren't in the Weaver.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
Mr. Rivera, what about you? Is there anything else that you think
No,
we
ma'am.
need to consider tonight?
No, I was hoping we would get to the preamble, because I thought that, I think that's a great idea, and thank you for bringing that up. But
Well, you've given us something to think about with the
Sure.
preamble then, and I think you definitely have our permission to go ahead and start drafting a preamble. We would love
Okay.
something, a basis point from which to work, so that would be good.
So just to be clear, on work tasks, I will take your notes that I've been writing down and try to come up with maybe some proposals for next time, at least so that you can begin thinking about them, maybe not for a full-blown discussion, but by the next meeting have these so that you can take them and look at them and have a preliminary discussion next time. Does that sound?
That's fine, and a draft of a preamble, if
Yes.
you have that in mind as well, and then we will dive into the Weaver recommendations at our next meeting.
Okay.
Sound good? Which is already set, and I believe it's in 3 weeks, correct, Dr. Villarreal, so we don't interfere with graduation?
Correct, I believe May 20th.
Yes. Same place. Okay, if there is nothing else, we will close this meeting at 5:38 PM. Thank you all so much for your participation.